All right, folks, welcome on into another edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman. He is Carl Jones. Carl, one of the busiest weekends of our high school sports calendar is in the rearview mirror. We made it through sectional final football. We made it through some state soccer we got out to Cortland, some volleyball action, some cross country we got on the air. A big weekend, and a lot of great and worthy champions made it both locally in Section 5 play and then at the state level. Just a great weekend of athletics.
We worked, boy, I'll tell you that. We was grinding, all right? Like, I know the kids was on the field and on the court doing their thing, but I'm going to pat ourselves on the back. No, I'm kidding. Not really. But regardless.
We can do it. We did some great work this week. We had Thad. He was watching his daughter play, and he was shooting games beforehand. Team effort here at Channel.
It was really the News 8 sports team did their thing over the past week. No, but for real, though, the kids really did their thing as well. It was games where teams said, you know what, we're not going to throw the ball today. We're going to be like Michigan and just run the ball every single play. There were games where teams dominated their foes from Buffalo. Teams raising some state championships. This is all around great week of ball. It was different flavors, and I think that's what makes it cool this time of year.
Yeah, and later on this program, as we do in all of our Far West regional shows, we are bringing in a guest from our friends over at WNY Athletics. Today it is Francis Beck. He had to fill in. Frank Wolf was going to come on, but he had a personal matters to take care of. So they have so many people who know so many things about the games that they cover. They can just grab in, reach someone off the bench and get some great coverage, some really great insight analysis. He's been broadcasting these games all season long. He'll be doing the same thing this weekend. So we appreciate Francis. We'll hear that interview in just a couple of minutes. But first, we'll dive into our sectional championship games. Carl, you were at most of these matchups, just the way the calendar and the schedule and the timing worked out. So our 5 sectional champions here in Section 5 for our 11-man football teams. In AA, it was McQuad winning 45-15 over UPrep. Friday night, it was East winning their long-awaited sectional title, 25-8 over Brighton. Class B, even longer awaited for the Monroe Red Jackets, taking down HFL 26-0. In Class C, it was Leroy beating Attica Alexander 27-14, taking down the defending sectional champs. And then I got out to a defensive showdown between Canisteo-Greenwood and York Pavilion, where they won 6-0 in a game, heavy in the turnover. So, Carl, you were at 4 of these games. A lot of, great football, a lot of interesting football. Just what are kind of some of the big takeaways you took away from the sectional games you were at this weekend?
Yeah, I took away that these teams can win in different ways. Some of these teams have dominated one way to get to this point, and they had to kind of play a different style last weekend. I mean, McQuad, I'm not going to say they're known for their aerial attack, but I don't think they've ever been known to only pass the ball once. And that's what happened against UPrep. They felt as if their advantage was, we're going to run the rock in the trenches, up tempo. It wasn't like, and this what made the game unfortunate to shoot. Usually when a team run the ball, all right, cool, I can put the camera down, let the shoulder rest, cool, whatever. That wasn't happening. They was running the rock, and then they was getting back up to do it again. And that obviously the game plan worked to perfection because UPrep really could never get them off the field. Johnny Harden, once again, did his thing. So the Knights showed a different flavor that says, hey, we can play a different style if need be. And that's what they did. And down in Class A East, getting it done for the first time since 2005, taking out a feisty Brighton squad, I would say. And I think it was just cool after the game just to see the emotion on their faces, finally getting to that mountaintop after they've been so close over the past few years. So that was cool to see. In Class B, I'm not going to say Monroe played a different style, but they, for the first time, had to actually work in the fourth quarter of a game. And that's what happened in that game against HFL. HFL put up a good fight, or at least competed for as long as they could. So that was good to see as well. And then Leroy, my head hurt still watching the game, not because it was a bad game, but because they was out there hitting. They was hitting some more. So really speaks to that coaching staff, on both coaching staffs, obviously, where they have some physical players out there and aren't afraid to go play some tough ball. So it was just a good, fun week. I know it got a little chilly for the UPrep game. I don't know. It was the earliest game of the day, but I was chilly. I don't know if it's how the wind is set up over there at Victor or it's a wind tunnel. I don't know what it was. I just know at noon I was struggling. I had to go inside. Thank God it was a blowout because I had to go inside. I'm like, I got to get warm. Like, I ain't going to make it to the post game. I'm going to be over here interviewing John Harding like, hey, Mr. Harding. Like, that's how bad it was going to be. So regardless, the nice day thing, looked out for my fingers because I thought I was going to lose them for a second. And it was just all in all fun week outside of the wind tunnel over there at Victor.
Yeah, it can't help, keep you warm when A, you're watching a ground and pound running game in front of you. B, you're keeping track of a Michigan team who, their head coach, passes away, of course, as they basically said in, the post game. They're running the heck out of the ball, but not exactly a passing array of passing attacks. McQuad, Will DeMarco, he's kind of battling through an injury, so I'm sure that played a little bit of a factor into the fact that they went so ground and pounded that one. But yeah, and Easton Monroe, just seeing, the reaction, the interviews, primetime 585, we have those on our website as well, talking about them. Both of those two teams just, they played so strong the past couple of years. They've come so close. East, everybody knows what they've done against Canandaigua, losing the past couple of years. Monroe, they lose in the heartbreaking fashion on the Hail Mary. To see those two teams get on top of the mountain, perhaps the highlight of this Section 5 football sectional championship weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I know the game is cool itself, but we've been in close in contact enough with these kids over the past few years, and just to seeing the raw emotion, I think, is the coolest part of it, because how hard they work, and I guess how much it means to them on a personal level. Obviously, I'm not in these kids' living rooms or nothing like that, but from our perspective, you can tell how much it means to them that they were able to finally raise a brick.
Yeah, some great stories off of that East team as well. So great to see them get a sectional title. And for my Class D game, Canisteo-Greenwood 6-0 against York Pavilion. It was a close game. The game-winning touchdown was scored in the final minutes, so I guess you can't ask for more than that. But Canisteo-Greenwood, the Chargers, I guarantee you that they are stressing ball security as they begin their Class D playoff run. 10 total turnovers in that game. They will have a stiff test in the Far West Regionals, which we were about to go dive right into. Let's waste no time. We'll get to our Far West Regional preview with Francis Boeck of WNY Athletics. Once again, great insight, great analysis. Let's bring you that preview right now. All right, now it's time to bring in Francis Boeck from WNY Athletics. Been covering Section 6 football all season long throughout the postseason. He'll be there at the Far West Regional games doing some pregame, halftime, postgame shows, full coverage for WNY Athletics this weekend. Francis, first of all, thanks for joining us on the show this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I filling in for our great leader, Frank Wolf, who had some other things going on today, so he asked me to fill in and talk about these teams playing at Williamsville South this weekend.
Yeah, whoever comes on from your company there, WNY Athletics, is always a great time. A lot of great insight. I know you guys work so hard covering these games, so looking forward to hearing what you have to say. We will just get right into it. We'll start at the top with Class AA, a matchup that should be no surprise, and a very familiar matchup for anybody who's followed Western New York football the last couple of years. McQuad and Bennett making it to winning the sectional championship for yet another year. These two teams have met 26-14. Bennett won in 2021. Last year it was a 2014 game. Bennett on their way to a state title. I guess I'll just start off with this. How does this year's Bennett team compare to these last two that we've seen?
There's no Rashad Perry. There's no replacing a guy like that who's 302 pounds going to Syracuse. But I'll tell you what, they reloaded with a lot of athletes. They still had Jameer Thomas coming back. He was a key contributor. But he's now kind of their lead guy. He kind of takes on that role that Jaden Lewis had last year, where in the beginning of the year, they used him more as a receiver, as an X. And then as you start to get to this time of year, they used him more as that tailback. You could tell, especially in that McQuad game, when things got tough, they went to Jaden Lewis in the backfield, and he took him over that edge. They've kind of been using Jameer that same way, again, starting him out as receiver. And in these past couple games, especially their last one, which was their closest to the year, it was a 20-7 win over Lancaster, where Lancaster was within a score of them in that second half. They really went to Jameer Thomas as their lead back. But they also have some other key pieces. Ryan Lawrence, who took over that number 7 jersey. He's an athlete on both sides of the football. He'll get a lot of carries. He reminds me a lot of Jaden Lewis. They both he wore that number last year, and the way he makes plays on both sides of the football, he's an athlete to watch out for. They got a new quarterback this year, Sherrard Bernard III, a lot like their quarterback last year. This isn't a passing offense, but they do enough to get what they need to do done. In kind of their Achilles heel before winning these state championships and really dominating was they're a one-dimensional team. They now have, these past few years, have had quarterbacks who they're not putting up 1,000 yards, he put up 1,300 yards. He's not going to blow you away with his arm, but he's going to be able to throw the ball when he needs to so that teams can't stack the box.
So McQuad last week in the sectional title game, they've been dealing with an injury to their starting quarterback, which affected a little bit, but they went ground heavy. They passed the ball one time in that sectional title win over UPrep. How has Bennett done this season on the defensive side of the ball, stopping down some of the best premier rushing attacks in Section 6 this season?
The defense, the Bennett defense, they lost Perry, and then earlier in the year, actually before the year started, they lost Darrell Hamilton, who they thought they had coming back from last year, but they've had guys step up. Delshawn Taylor just nominated for the Trench Trophy, which is an award given out here to the top lineman in Western New York. He's a finalist for that award. They also have some guys in the back end, Kamari Cook with 101 tackles, and then they have Noah McDuffie, who is the son of not only Coach McDuffie, but the younger brother of Isaiah McDuffie, who played for Bennett, is now playing for the Green Bay Packers. He's got an eye for the football. He is great at that safety spot, and they've really been shutting down teams this year. They've put out 3 shutouts and really they've won by double-digit margins most of the year.
And then I kind of want to talk about that, winning by so much this season, and then they get into that sectional title game. Like you mentioned, their closest one of the season. They only win by a 20-7 score. Kind of what did you see in that sectional championship game with them, dealing with a little bit of adversity for perhaps the first time this season?
There was something I kind of talked to my colleague Tom Prince about. The one thing I was worried about with Bennett is, unlike last year, they didn't really have any big tests. Remember last year, they went to Ohio to face one of the top teams there. They faced McDowell, who's a powerhouse of the PA. They lost those games, but you learned a lot from them. This year, before that game, their closest game was a 3-touchdown win over a Lockport team who's in Class A. So they've been taking care of business. Of course, McQuad was last year. Remember this game? I was there. McQuad was up 14-0 at the half and really gave Bennett a scare. So it's a little bit of a concern. You think, to talk about Lancaster, they are very well coached, and we knew going in that coaching staff was going to put Lancaster in a very good position. But ultimately, Bennett figured out a way. There was a point where Thomas got a little hurt, and we know there was Coach McDuffie wasn't quite happy with the way things were going, little upset. But the team responded right away. Bennett drove down the field and scored the go-ahead touchdown. So at least in that moment last week, in under the big lights, they did respond. But I'm sure guys like Jameer and the coaching staff are preaching to their guys right now. This Aquinas game was no easy walk in the park. We were down big to them with our season on the line, and we had to go at it. So hopefully, at least for a Bennett standpoint, these younger players who haven't been to this point yet are getting the message, and they'll be ready for McQuad if McQuad can put up a similar first half as they did last year.
Yeah, McQuad certainly no strangers to close games this season. They've had quite some finishes. That will be the finale for Saturday night, 7:00. The premier matchup, Class AA, McQuad and Bennett. So let's start turning our attention to Carl and the Class A game, the finale on Friday.
Yeah, Friday, 8 p.m. primetime slot right there. Another undefeated matchup between East and Clarence out of the Buffalo area. Both of these teams undefeated, like I said. No strangers to each other whatsoever. They're complete strangers to each other. East, first time they've been here since 2005, while Clarence also over a decade, I believe 2010. East, very explosive team, especially throughout the air. AJ and I always talk about styles making fights on this podcast. And when you look at Clarence, they're a team that's kind of unique with how they approach their offense. They have some double wing stuff, but they also can pass the ball as well, which is kind of unique with a team that does a double wing. Just how unique is this Clarence offense Because quite frankly, here in Section 5, you usually do one or the other. You usually don't do both.
Well, Clarence for years was known for that double T wing offense, almost running it exclusively. And then this year comes along junior quarterback Bryce Tubin, leads the section with over 200, over 2,000 yards passing, 2,200 yards passing, 23 touchdowns. And if you talk to Coach Paul Bergio, he's really a game changer and has allowed them to open up that passing game now that they truly have a spread attack and a double wing T, which, even if you can stop one of them, you have to, as a defense, at least prepare for both, which makes them tough. And they have some really good receivers, Patrick Wind, who can catch the ball. But yeah, this is a tough offense to prepare for because they can both do the pass and the double wing T. And that reason is Bryce Tubin that has really brought that second dimension to their offense.
And then talking about Clarence's defense for a second, East, they can put the points up, but a lot of it's through the air. Zamir Jackson is third in Section 5 history with his passing yardage total this season. A lot of playmakers on the outside as well. Anthony Diaz, Irvin Wiggins, to name a few. Has Clarence seen a team that can pass the ball? And if so, how have those matchups kind of gone for them?
They really haven't in their Class A. I'm about to have their schedule up here, but they really haven't faced too many passing attacks teams. I know I saw a bit of this East team over the summer when they played in the New York State High School Football Coaches Association 7-on-7. They won that tournament, so they really opened some eyes there. Have some passing teams that they've played, but a lot of it has been teams that run the ball. They haven't really seen too many teams that really love to spread it out. So that will be a bit of a challenge for Clarence, who is more of a physical team. So it'll be interesting to see how they can line up to a full spread attack that loves to throw the ball like East.
Yeah, this teams over the past few weeks have tried to do that to East. Haven't succeeded, but Clarence will probably be the best team they've seen thus far this year. And last but not least, their road to get here, they've had a couple close games, especially in their semifinal game as well. Just what have they shown you throughout this sectional run that lets you believe that they're ready for a game like this on this big stage in the Far West Regional?
Well, they've had 3 games decided by a touchdown or less in their first, and one of them was Lockport, who they beat in their first time 20-26, which I believe was in week 3 or 4. And then the second time around at the stadium, they beat them by a couple touchdowns. Granted, Lockport turned over the ball 5 or 6 times, so that helped things. But this Clarence team showed that they can learn from previous mistakes. They have shown adversity. Games that maybe were a little bit more lopsided in the regular season were closer in the playoffs. So they've played through some adversity this year, despite not losing a game. For being 11-0, this team has faced some adversity this year. In their semifinal game, they did lose their quarterback Tubin for a little while, and they had a backup Corey Cummins come in. I believe he'll be mostly running that double ting wing offense like he did last week. So they have faced some adversity despite being 11-0 this year.
Can't wait for this one. If you like offense, I got a feeling this one's going to be high scoring, especially with a diverse attack on both sides of the ball. Remember, this game will be Friday, 8 p.m., as always, over there at Will South. AJ, over in Class B now.
Yeah, Class B. Can a team beat Monroe here in Section 5? Next up for them will be Buffalo Health Sciences in the Far West Regional, ranked 9th in the state. They took down Pioneer 38-27 in their sectional championship game. This game is going to be Saturday at 3:30. And a lot of places you can go to start this matchup, but we'll start with Buffalo Health Sciences offense because Monroe has allowed just 1 touchdown on the season. Granted, Section 5 Class B, a little bit of a down year. They didn't face, too much of a strong competition, but they did handle some decent quarterbacks. Tell me a little bit about the Buffalo Health Sciences offense, and I'm sure you're going to start with their star running back here.
Yeah, it starts with Antoine Caesar, 1,500 yards, 17 touchdowns. He played by far the best of any player playing at the stadium last weekend. Someone I was talking to made the comment, he probably wouldn't have a lot of, they did the stat yards after first contact because no one's touching him for a long time. He's just that fast. He's a Connolly Cup finalist, an award. He's a finalist for one of the best awards out here in Western New York, a special player, but there's a lot of special players on this team, guys who could go to other teams, good teams, and be the number 1 guy, but they come here and they share touches. including Tyrone Hughes Jr., you're going to see carry the ball a little bit. You'll mostly see him on defense. He actually transferred from another school where he was the guy, and that team was considered a favorite or at least in contention to win in Class A. Now he's down in Class B, really sharing the load with really a bunch of other stars. But yeah, this health science team has tons of speed on the outside. Shamir Banks, their quarterback, loves to throw the ball downfield. He's got a big receiver in Kayvon Pitts. And if Monroe doesn't cover, if they're too focused on Caesar stopping the run, Banks and this health science offense has no problem throwing it deep downfield.
Now, Monroe on the offensive side of the ball, a lot of speed, a lot of talent on the outside, a lot of players who can go up and get balls from the receiver position. Tell me a little bit about Buffalo Health Sciences defense and, how you think they might stack up with such a playmaker heavy offense here from Monroe.
What you just said kind of describes Health Sciences, their team. I remember I saw them first game of the year where Banks was just kind of chucking it downfield, and Kayvon Pitts would go up and make these unbelievable catches. So that's going to be a fun matchup on the outside to see these receivers and BBs go at it. One thing, when you talk about this Health Sciences team, I think that's the big difference from Monroe is that they are battle tested. Our B1 division and Class B was probably our toughest out of here in Section 6 and really tougher for a while. Their one loss came to Williamsville South, a team that just missed the playoffs. And to be honest, if you put Williamsville South and moved them up to Class A this year, they're probably a playoff team. But because the way things played out, they didn't make it. They had a team in their division, South Park, with Noah Willoughby, who broke a name you probably know, Joe Licata, who's very well known around here, broke his all-time career passing record, and that was only just in his own division. You have a good team, Pioneer, who they beat twice and a close margin. So this team is certainly battle-tested, and we know Monroe's put up big. I was just looking up their stats. They have a 78-0 win in their first game of the quarterfinals. That has not been the case whatsoever for Health Sciences. So in terms of facing adversity, Health Sciences has a big advantage.
Yeah, Monroe certainly hasn't faced many challenges. And even last week, that was a game that Carl was at in the sectional championship game. They faced, a bit of a test with HFL, and you can maybe speak a little bit to it, Carl. They did not do a good job of putting them away until that fourth quarter. They kind of let them hang around. And, that's really not something you can do against a quality team like Health Sciences here.
Nah, you can't do it against those teams at all. It was funny because the game never felt like it was in doubt, because HFL couldn't move it, but you would still want to see a championship caliber team just leave no doubt, and just make sure the game didn't have a chance. So it was one of those weird situations where it was like, all right, this is your first chance to step on the gas a little bit. Didn't do it until late. But when I was there, I'm like, HFL is not going to win, but it's still a 2-score game in the fourth. So it was one of those scenarios.
Well, one of the Achilles heels that Health Science does have, and I think they kind of took care of it last week, but it's been a bit of an issue throughout the season, is penalties, especially pre-snap penalties, false starts, holdings. That's kind of been the thing that has held them back the year. There was their game against South Park. They should have won by, I think they ended up winning by 2 or 3 touchdowns, but they didn't really take the lead or put the gas on until the fourth quarter. But they found themselves in a lot of first and long, second and longs. I think there at one point they may have been in 3rd and 30 because of pre-snap penalties and holding. So that is a bit of Achilles heel. I think it was a little bit shown to be taken care of last week, but that's a problem that could rear its head for Health Sciences.
Yeah, this one of the few matchups where Section 5 favored in the state rankings. Once again, this game Saturday at 3:30, which will be right after our Class C game. Carl?
Class C, we got Leroy taking on Salamanca. Leroy, according to the rankings, 6th in the state, Salamanca 13. Look, I know we were just talking about high-flying aerial attacks and all that good type of stuff, passing, modern offenses. Well, these two teams, at least from Leroy's perspective, they don't care about none of that. They're taking it back a bit, and they're going to ground and pound their way to a win, no matter that's their objective at least. However, Salamanca, they tend to be more of a balanced attack. In fact, I see that they have 2 quarterbacks. Speak on their offense a little bit, because I know usually when you get down to these lower levels, teams tend to run the ball a little bit more often, but Salamanca shows that they're able to do both.
Well, C in the past 2 years. That C South division that Salamanca came out of was one. It came down to the very end. They won that division, but the 2 games they needed to win, I think, were by a touchdown and then 1 point. And then they got in the playoffs and were in another couple close games. This Salamanca team, a little bit of a Cinderella. They weren't favored going into the stadium. I think most of us had Medina slightly favored, not a massive upset, but certainly bit of a Cinderella. They wasn't expected to win. Their quarterback, Jackson Ross, they have 2 quarterbacks who will be kind of splitting in time. Great story. His father actually passed away earlier this season, and this community was so riled up to get that win. It was just amazing to see the emotion on the field. So this community and this team is really railing behind these players, and just an amazing story there. So they're kind of playing, I guess you would a little bit, I don't want to say on fumes, but they have that whole backing that certainly as you would, especially at the high school level. But as you mentioned it, this offense is pretty balanced. They like to throw the ball. You have Ross is almost 1,000 yards. I believe his backup, I don't have it in front of me, is pretty close to that. Maddox Isaac has also been throwing the ball quite a bit. Their running back is Joshua Allman, 431 yards. And then they have a receiver who didn't really even play last year, Lucas Brown. And he's actually a basketball player first, but he had a great game this game. He had a fantastic one-handed catch right in the end zone for a touchdown. And the Salamanca team kind of came from behind and won that game. So the one thing I'm concerned about with them is they really haven't been to this point really in a long time. Their last sectional title win was 2001. So, I mean, I think that was before any of these kids were even born, or you're talking right when they were. So as far as battle tested go, they really haven't faced that. They have had some adversity in some close games, but as far as getting to this point in the season, facing teams from out of the area, that's a bit of a concern for them.
For sure. This matchup is actually kind of unique. This is the 5th time these teams have met in this round. Now, granted, all of these matchups were in the 90s in the 80s when, once again, I wasn't alive and I know these kids wasn't alive. So that was a long time ago when these teams were running things here in Western New York back in the day. I can't even say back in the day because for someone else, that might be like, I don't know, their childhood or something like that. But regardless, Leroy, you talk about a balanced attack for Salamanca. There's nothing balanced about what Leroy likes to do. They run the ball on first down, second, third, and if it's 4th and 7, they might run it in too. They have going into last week, you would have said they got this kid named Tony Piazza. That's their star player. But last week, he didn't even win the MVP. There was a kid, his backup, Andrew Schrolo, who was. So the question that I asked is, Salamanca against a team who can run the rock, how have they shown that they've been able to slow a team down in that regard?
Well, the team they beat in Medina is a team that likes to run the ball, although it's a balanced attack, but their line was led by Roosevelt Mitchell, who's actually committed to play next year at Akron in the MAC. And he has a lineman who some say is just as good as he is. So they face some very big matchups in the trenches, and they were able to run the ball against some very good linemen in Medina, who traditionally always have good linemen. So that bodes well for Salamanca, that they can stop the run, as they kind of already did in at least the game before. And I know Portville, who they faced, also had a strong running attack.
Ooh, can't wait for this one. It sounds like, folks, make sure these kids' chin straps are tightened up. Make sure the shoulder pads are nice and snug, because sounds like they're going to be popping. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Once again, this game will be Saturday over at Will South at noon. And AJ, last but not least, down in Class D.
Yeah, last but not least for classification standing, but the first game of the weekend, 5:00 on Friday evening into the night. Clymer Sherman Panama, CSP is their, I'd say, more commonly known, ranked 2nd in the state, undefeated record, taking on Canisteo-Greenwood with a 9-2 record, 8th in the state. CSP, just looking at their stats, their record, they've put up a lot of points this season. They've clearly, had a great year, undefeated record. Just what has kind of made the CSP team so strong this season?
It's pretty rare to go into a season and say CSP is the favorite, and they weren't even at the stadium the year before. But we knew because a lot of these guys had been starting last year and even the year before as freshmen and sophomores. We knew that this year was going to be their time, and they've really taken things to a next level. They were led by quarterback Tate Cantonese, 1,500 yards, 22 touchdowns. He's a kid that loves to throw the football. You don't see that very often down in Class D. He's done a great job throwing the football, and last week he showed that he can even run the football. There were times when they went to him on some QB draws. He looked a little bit like Josh Allen, which he kind of said when we talked to him in our post game with him, that he kind of channeled that Josh Allen energy running the football on that field at Highmark Stadium. But yeah, he was able to do that. He is a great receiver in Bryce Hinsdale, who is the younger brother of Garrett Hinsdale, who led this Wolfpack team to back-to-back state titles back in 2018, 2019. And in fact, there's about 5 or 6 guys who were younger brothers of players who were on those teams. So they certainly have a great idea of what it takes to be successful during this time of year. I know they're on the phone with their older brothers right now. I know Bryce has said that before, that he's always talking to Garrett about, going through the season, especially this time of year. So for not have, so they have the game experience and they have the experience watching through osmosis with their older brothers. So, yeah, certainly a lot there for CSP. And we just talked about Salamanca in that Class C game. CSP beat Salamanca and they beat Southwestern also, who was also a top team. That Southwestern game, they won 38-3 and they beat Salamanca 37-6. That's your Class C champion right there. So that just shows you how good CSP is. And their eyes have been on that state title since the beginning of the year.
Yeah, facing a Canisteo-Greenwood team who won an ugly football game would probably be the best way to put it in that Class C championship game, 10 turnovers combined. So it sounds like the CSB football team.
What was it, raining there or something?
It was not. It was just everybody's, interceptions, fumbles. We had one play where there was an interception and the guy got fumbled behind him. So we had 2 turnovers on one play. That was just kind of that game in a nutshell for sure. So it sounds like CSP is, not the type of team that's only going to put up 6. You're probably going to have to score with this CSP football team if it sounds like it.
Yeah, their average points per game is nearly 40 points. I mean, that's almost unheard of at this time of year. And again, they beat teams from who are top in Class C. They could have been capable if they were playing Class C, possibly winning that crown. Yeah, this CSB team is very good. They're seasoned and they're poised for a big run.
Yeah, perhaps maybe one of, if not the strongest teams to come out of Section 6 as we hit this Far West Regionals, which you'll be with every step of the way. Before we let you go, why don't you plug the social media channels, the places you'll be, the ways that people can watch your work this weekend?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Just search WNY Athletics. We're going to have pregame, halftime, and postgame shows. And then our crew is also running the games on the NFHS network. I don't know if you guys had them down there in Section 5, but all of the games in the playoffs have been on there on NFHS during Section 6. And not only that, but if you get your subscription this week and your team wins, you'll be able to see them next week and at the Carrier Dome. It's a monthly subscription, so it's a one subscription fits all. You can watch your game. You can watch the other games you want to keep an eye on. You can even watch the games, maybe if your team wins, you want to see who you're going to face in the semifinals.
Always a great value. Always great work you guys do over at WNY Athletics. We really appreciate you guys' insights. Every Far West Regionals, whether it's the basketball season, the football season, baseball in the spring, a lot of great insight, a lot of great analysis. We always appreciate you. Once again, Francis Beck from WNY Athletics. Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks again for Francis for coming on the podcast. And we say this every single time, and there's no reason why we shouldn't say it again. Just the insight, the analysis, and really just the passion of covering these high school athletes, whether it's, all the sports. I know they cover the soccer teams as well. We don't get the chance to put them on there as well, but all their athletes, you can just tell the determination, the research they put in. They really know these players, quite frankly, maybe sometimes even better than we do with our guys. So you can just really tell how much knowledge they have that they bring to our podcast. We appreciate it every single time.
And that's the key part, the knowledge aspect of it. Like, of course, it's great that they care and they're very passionate about it. But the fact that they know what they're talking about also, I guess, makes the content that much better. Makes the conversation more engaging because they're there. They see the kids on a weekly basis, and they know what they're talking about. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh Lordy, okay, this kid got that. I'm here. Oh, he going to the MAC. Oh, okay, all that good type of stuff. So regardless, it's always fun when they hop on, regardless of the season as well. They do it for all the sports. So it's always a dope time when they can hop on.
Yeah, and we run that interview start to finish. There is no, we ask them a question and like, guys, I don't really know the answer to that one. Let's cut that out and make me sound smart. They sound smart all the time. So thanks again for Francis for coming on our podcast. And before we close the show today, let's head a quick wrap up of our state championship weekend. In soccer, we had 3 teams raise the New York State championship plaques. In boys soccer, it was Aquinas winning the Class A crown, a double overtime thriller over Byram Hills. JB Leary, the golden goal there for them in double overtime. He also had the game-winning goal, the only goal in their semifinal victory on Friday. He was our player of the week. In girls soccer, we had a pair of champions. The Spencerport Rangers got their long-awaited state title with a 2-0 win over Smithtown West. Another clean sheet for the Rangers. I believe their 20th of the season. They had gone to Portland in the state Final Four the past 4 trips. They finally get on top. And I went there to that game. It was a good game. It was a well-played game. And just talking to them after the fact, everybody wants to win these games, of course, but they just drilled home every single interview question. I could be asking them about, what they had for breakfast this morning. They'd be like, I had a bowl of cereal and a banana, and I really wanted to win this soccer game. So it just exuded, how much they wanted to finally get back on top. Their 3rd overall state champion. And then Haverling in girls soccer, also a state crown, a 1-0 victory over Babylon, their first in program history. So a lot of great results from our soccer teams bringing home championships to the Rochester area.
Yeah, we haven't been able to cover as much as we maybe have liked. In the sectional, we did pick it up for sectional play for sure. But it's always cool to see that, especially with teams like Spencerport, where they're good in Section 5. And now that the rest of the state, obviously they're familiar with the Rangers, but they can tell the rest of the state, yeah, y'all looking up at us too, not just Rochester. So kudos to all the teams that are bringing bricks back to the 5A5.
The other state play, the regionals for girls volleyball and boys volleyball. In girls action, you had Fairport and Schrader winning their Far West regional matchups. They will be going to Glens Falls for their state Final Four. In boys volleyball, Section 5, always dominant in the boys volleyball sphere, sending 2 teams, 2 states once again. It'll be Fairport joining the girls to the Albany area. The boys actually played directly in Albany. They made it with a Division I win. And then Spencerport going back to the state Final 3 as they do a little round robin there. They won as well, their regional matchup in the Buffalo area. A good showing from our volleyball teams. And as we talked about before on the show, Thad getting to watch his daughter win a championship in the Far West Regionals, and got to call us highlights. So that was a cool thing to watch. If you didn't see it, it's on Twitter. A fun moment for Thad, for the Schrader Warriors, and us as we're along for the ride.
It was actually kind of funny because for some odd reason, don't know why, I thought his daughter was number 7. Don't even know if Schrader has a number 7, but I'm watching his daughter get a bunch of kills, and I'm like, man, I don't know who this is, but she's going in our show. That's how this works. And then we get to the 3rd set, and I was behind Schrader at first, and then in the 3rd set they're facing me, and I'm like, okay, that girl looked really she looked like Maddie. She really looked like Maddie, and if that's not Thad's daughter, we got issues here. Come to find out, I realized that was Thad's daughter because I knew he mentioned that she was a lefty before. So I'm like, yeah, it's not that many lefties on this planet. So it was actually kind of cool that I was there for the time that she was doing her thing, and even more cool that he was able to call her highlights on Saturday.
Yeah, it worked out well. Thad, he didn't want to show favoritism throughout, this coverage. He'd always tell us, or at least certainly me, if Maddie has to definitely go in the highlight, she goes in there. We can't, not show her getting the game-winning kill. But if it's a toss-up, show everybody else. She showed out in that second set where she had to be in that highlight.
Because I'm not joking, y'all. I had no idea that was his daughter. I don't know why I thought it was her daughter was number 7. Maybe because lucky number 7, lefty, all that good type of stuff. I just assumed that she was a 7. She wears number 8 for those at home. I was just so confused. So I promise you, was no favoritism. I was just shooting who was doing good, and it was Thad's daughter.
So they will be going on to the state Final 4, Final 3 for the boys. We will have that coverage as well. We're getting a little bit of help from our Albany friends as well, because we don't really want to make Thad shoot his daughter win or go a state title, but we'll see how that turns out. And then cross country, we also had a pair of state champions, Will Tempest of Pittsford Sutherland and James Teddy of Penn Yan, James Tet of Penn Yan, in the B and C crowns respectively. So cross country getting it done as well on the state area. This weekend, we will also have locally at the Webster Aquatic Center, the state swimming and diving championships. So we'll be getting a little bit of coverage of that as well. But we got a busy weekend of Henry Russ. We got volleyball, we got football. I'll be going out to the Buffalo area, spend some time with the fam and shooting a lot of great games. So, we had a busy weekend last week. Doesn't really slow down too much, Carl.
Time to run it back, baby. Time to run it back. Stay warm out there. I saw the forecast. The 60s is today. I don't know about the weekend, but you stay warm. Make sure you got your hand warmers, your big coats. Newsday did bless us last year with the big coats. Make sure you're wearing that, because it might get a little hectic out there for you.
Yeah, so I'll be enjoying that. A lot of hot chocolates I think I'm going to be purchasing at the concession center. Always a great time. And shout out to PalMac. They won the football independent Wayne Finger Lakes championship. And specifically shout out to the concession people at Minders. I ordered 2 hot chocolates for the road after PalMac pulled away. Got them for free. So always a nice little perk of the job. Saved $2, even though I do like to support the respective athletic ventures.
Always good to get the nice hot cocoa. Always good to get that.
So that'll do it for us here today on the High School Huddle. It's time to break the huddle. We will be back with you potentially next week. We're going to figure out our schedules because we got this Thanksgiving holiday going on Thursday. So potentially we'll see you next week. Honestly, if I had to bet, we'll be back for you in case any of our teams make it to the state championship weekend. So probably no show next week, but you'll just have to listen to this one twice. So thank you for joining us here on the High School Huddle. You can find us rochesterfirst.com, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, social media. Football Frenzy is done, but we'll have all the highlights for you. For Carl Jones, I'm AJ Feldman. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.